Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Thursday, February 26th, and you see the headline. Yes, we have the Peter Schiff warming up in the bullpen, ready to go on the Shannon Joy Show today. We are so thankful for Peter. We are so thankful for his wisdom, his expertise, and his consistency over the past 20 years. A philosophy about the economy that is rooted in principles of liberty that keeps him solidly in the common sense zone and out of the political fracas, which is one of the reasons he's one of the best analysts out there. We are going to be talking about all sorts of things today. Of course, the State of the Union address yesterday. Peter called it the spin of the union, and I agree 100%. I did my own analysis of that address yesterday, and we'll get Peter's thoughts on that, along with other economic and financial news that is going to be incredibly important to all of you. No, I am not taking a position, by the way, in case you're wondering, not taking a position on the Candace Owens, Erica Kirk fracas. Not going to happen. I know that everyone in conservative media desperately trying to draw your attention away from the disaster that is the presidency of the United States of America and the economic turmoil that is incoming. And so if you are interested in watching a soap opera, I would encourage you to watch any other news outlet in conservative news media. Here on the Shannon Joy Show, we're going to talk about the things that matter to you. And right now on the minds of every American is the economy, inflation, labor, jobs, wages. Devastating headline from the Wall Street Journal. Americans are leaving the United States in record numbers. What does that say about the quality of life here in the US? What does it say about your purchasing power? Horrifying headlines about the housing market and skyrocketing valuations of homes in the US. We are literally witnessing the ripping away of the American dream of home ownership, moving us into a renter society, and it's on purpose. This was one of the promises that Donald Trump made in his State of the Union address yesterday, that he's going to keep those home prices high so that people who own homes feel rich. Well, feeling rich isn't the same as being rich, and it is destroying the opportunity for subsequent generations to actually own property, which is a cornerstone of the American dream. Absolutely insane. So we're going to be talking with Peter about all of that, what's going on with gold and silver, somewhat of a volatile week last week for silver, and some big news out of India that I think indicates that we are moving into dollar weakness as the world dumps the dollar. This is from Reuters. India markets are regulators now changing their gold and silver valuation methods for mutual funds. This is going to be very good for gold and silver, and I do think is signaling dollar weakness, and we're going to ask Peter about that. Basically, they, for many, many years, have been using the LBMA. It's the London pricing. So, they price what they believe gold and silver are worth, and that's what the globe has used to value it. There have been many who have been accusing some of these regulators and some of these valuation firms for suppressing silver prices in particular for decades. And it looks like now India is going to be using a local Indian market price from their own Indian stock exchange to value silver and gold, which means, signals they're moving away from some of these other valuation firms. And I think that is incredibly interesting. And I think that it is signaling a massive change in how the global economy is going to function. The big overall umbrella discussion with Peter is going to be, what does that look like here in the US? An economy that is not connected to or dependent on the United States dollar as the world reserve currency. What does our life look like in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What are our kids' lives going to look like in the future? As it appears, these countries, BRICS nations, are becoming strengthened and emboldened to move off of the dollar reserve system. So we're going to ask him about that. We're also going to look at a piece that Peter wrote in 2015. I'm going to bring him on in just a moment to launch the show. Really beautiful tribute that he wrote to his dad, or about his dad, Irwin Schiff, who passed away. It's the anniversary of his passing, and this is just the initial. I want to read some of this to all of you. I'll bring Peter on to read this to you as well, because I think it gives a great amount of insight into who Peter Schiff is and how he was influenced and why he loves liberty so much, and why free markets are such a central component of freedom. And this philosophy was passed on to Peter by his dad, and it underscores everything he's done over the past couple decades. It's one of the reasons I am so proud and confident to work with Peter as a sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show. Schiff Gold, as you guys know, sponsors the SJ show, and they are my #1 recommendation. Anything that you need in terms of metals, gold or silver, whether it's T gold, physical gold and silver, a gold and silver backed IRA. I do not trust anyone more than I trust Peter Schiff on this. And it is primarily because of his consistency over time, his commitment to liberty above all else, and the honesty that is always present in his analysis. You might not always agree with him, but you know that Peter Schiff is going to tell you what he really thinks about what is really going on. And that is such a unique and wonderful blessing to be working with someone that I respect so much. And I think a lot of that comes from his dad. So I'm going to bring Peter in. Enough of me. What am I talking about? I'm going to bring Peter Schiff in. And I want to start this conversation, Peter, with this piece that you wrote about your dad. He passed in 2015. And there was just recently an anniversary of his death. And I wanted to read it, if you don't mind, a little bit of it before we get started, because it was really beautiful.
Sure. But, a couple days ago, it wasn't the anniversary of his death, but of his birth. His birthday is February 23rd. And so that's what made me post about it. I forget the day that he died. I don't necessarily like to remember that day. It was not a very good day. Yeah. I still have all the memories of that day, and I wish I could get rid of them because it's not a pleasant memory. I'm glad I was there when he passed, but it's not a good memory. So I'd rather remember his birth, although I don't remember it because it happened like 35 years before I was born.
Right.
But yeah, that's where the piece came from. But yeah, I wrote it initially after he died, kind of like, as an obituary kind of thing, just, letting people know that he had died. And some people weren't necessarily familiar with him. And so when they read that, that was the first time they were learning about my dad. Although most people who followed me long enough knew about him, because he is something that I have discussed from time to time on my own podcasts. And I have been selling a couple of his books, the ones that I have on Schiff Books. I've been selling the Federal Mafia, Kingdom of Malt. So people knew that I was, having people buy some of my dad's books, because they could have a window into what shaped me, because I learned most of what I know from my father, and not necessarily everything I know, but my way of thinking, my understanding of economics. So a lot of the opinions that I form today are my own opinions, but I'm able to derive those opinions based on an understanding of economics that I owe to my father. And so if he didn't, teach me and instill this understanding in me at a young age, I may not be able to, to figure this stuff out as easily as I do now.
Well, your dad died a political prisoner. He died in prison, and chained to a hospital bed, which is just, absolutely tragic. But he was a wonderful teacher. And what I learned about him, he just loved liberty. You right here, he had a lifelong love affair with our nation's founding principles, and proudly served the country during the Korean War. He was born on February 23rd, 1928, and he was the eighth child and only son of Jewish immigrants who crossed the Atlantic 20 years earlier in search of freedom. And why don't you tell us a little bit? I don't want to, I've linked this, guys. I would encourage you guys to take a look at the piece. I've linked it into the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show. But why don't I let you talk about your dad in your own words and tell the audience about how he, influenced you, how he became, how he developed this lifelong love affair with our founding principles, and really, after being exposed to the principles of Austrian economics through the writings of Hazlitt and Friedrich Hayek, really began to develop a great understanding of economies and how they work, and why freedom and liberty is such an essential component of that. But why don't I let you explain?
Yeah, well, I mean, it would take a podcast all to itself to really get into my dad and the origins of his thinking and his life story. But he had a really solid understanding of economics from the Austrian perspective, of the Constitution, and what it actually means, and the powers that it actually enumerated for the federal government, and more importantly, those that were reserved for the states or the people. And he wrote his first book was The Biggest Con: How the Government is Fleecing You. The original title for that book, the working title, was Inflation, Public Enemy Number One.
Wow.
But Random House wanted to change that. But where he got that title was Gerald Ford had declared that inflation was public enemy number one. And my father knew that the government causes inflation. So that if inflation was public enemy number one, that meant that the U.S. government was public enemy number one. And ever since then, the government still tries to confuse people about inflation, what it is and where it comes from. It comes from the government. And when they talk about a cost of living crisis, it is a cost of government crisis. It's the government that is responsible for the rising cost of living. And my father knew that. And so his first book was, did very well. It was well reviewed by all the mainstream publications. Wall Street Journal gave it a very good review. My father was still one of the few people who in 1968, when they were first proposing giving the president the power to take us off the gold standard, something that was not exercised until Richard Nixon, but the power was given to the president prior to that, under Johnson. And there were hearings. And my father testified against the removal of gold backing. Testifying in favor of it was the Secretary of the Treasury at the time and the Chairman of the Fed. And they both testified that if we went off the gold standard, the dollar would be stronger and the price of gold, which was $35 an ounce, would go down. They argued that the dollar was propping up gold. And my father said, you got it backwards. It's going to be the dollar that goes down and gold's going to go way up. We're going to have high inflation. We're going to have all the problems. And everything that the Fed chair and the Secretary of the Treasury forecast was wrong. Everything my father forecast was right. And that's pretty much the same today. The Secretary of the Treasury and the Chairman of the Fed are always wrong about economics.
Yeah.
But the shifts have got it right. But my dad later on discovered a lot of things about the income tax and how the U.S. government was, collecting them and enforcing them illegally. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a lot of books about it. And that's what got him into trouble. And he stopped paying the tax himself. And he died serving it, 10 years into a 13-year prison sentence that he didn't even get until he was, in his late 70s.
Oh, my word.
And he was a political prisoner in that he was put in jail to send a message, to try to discourage people from following his advice, to punish him. But if you want to understand his thought process, you should go to schiffbooks.com and buy a copy of The Federal Mafia. And one of the distinctions of The Federal Mafia is it's one of 2 books in U.S. history that the federal government banned.
Wow. Yep.
The first one was Fanny Hill, and it was banned because it was considered pornographic.
Okay.
And if you read that book today, it's nothing. By today's standards, it's like a fairy tale, right? But the only other book that was ever banned was my father's book. The government actually banned it. Now, they didn't ban it, from like the public. They banned my father from selling it. So Barnes and Noble could sell it. But my father was banned for selling it. But still, that's only happened twice. And one time was with the federal. So, because obviously you have freedom of the press. So it's very difficult to ban a book in America when you have freedom of the press. But they banned my father's book. But they didn't ban it because it was wrong. They banned it because it was actually accurate and they had no way of refuting it. So they tried to stop him from selling it. But you could read it and understand, and that'll show you. But the thing about, when my father died, so my father was in prison, and they sent him to a hospital prison in Indiana when he turned 80, because they said he needed to be in a facility that could take better care of older people and had better medical attention. Of course, they gave him no medical attention whatsoever because they allowed the skin cancer that had started on his head. Dad was bald, so prone to getting skin cancer on your head. They could have taken care of it, but they did nothing. And by the time they knew he had cancer, he was practically dead, right? And so when they knew he had cancer, they gave him like 4 months to live or something like that. And maybe 6 months, I don't know, but he didn't even live as long as they gave him. But when we found this out, we tried to get him released on compassionate release, saying, look, he's been in jail for 10 years. Yeah. Can you let him out of prison? Because he's obviously going to die in prison because he's got a couple more years left of his sentence and he doesn't have that long to live. So can you let him out so at least he can die, in the company of his family, his children, his, grandchildren, his nieces and nephews, would like to be able to see him, right? And maybe he could say goodbye or talk to them. They wouldn't let him out. They kept him in prison despite the fact that he was terminal. And when he died, he was still chained to his hospital bed by his ankle. So he had that uncomfortable metal chain. There was an armed guard in the room, even though my father was breathing through a tube and he couldn't even get out of the bed. He had to go to the bathroom. They had like something hooked up because he couldn't even go to the bathroom. He had to use a tube that was attached to him, to pee or, poop. Yet they still had that guard. They still had him handcuffed. And they said, well, those are the regulations. I'm like, well, can't you just realize that the regulations are inhumane when the guy's, 80, 70, 87 and dying? But it really shows you, like, people want the government to provide health care. Look at how the health care is in prison, because that's government provided health care. It is awful. I mean, had my father not gone to prison, he was in good health when he went into prison. And I'm sure, we would have cured his skin cancer early on with regular medical care. He'd probably still be alive at 88. I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I mean, 98. You never know.
Right.
But the thing is, they wouldn't even let him out of prison. And the frustrating part is when I was in the hospital room the day that he died, and we died because, they basically pulled the plug that he was breathing off of. But the doctor said he's got no chance. He's never going to, so he was, it was just, he had no, at that point he was gone. He couldn't talk. He couldn't do anything. But I got a call from the Bureau of Prisons asking me more questions about compassionate release. And I was like, look, there's no point anymore. He's going to be dead in a few hours, And so it was like, but this is how bad government works, because when I started trying to get him out, it was early. And part of the frustrating part is the cancer changed his voice. So for like the last year, he couldn't even make any calls because the prison phone system didn't recognize his voice. So we couldn't even really talk to him.
Oh,
It,
it's
it was it
horrible.
was really, I mean, the government is horrible in the United States. They're extremely corrupt. The people that work in government are the most corrupt, dishonest people that exist.
Mm.
And it's unfortunate that a lot of people, they distrust capitalism and businessmen, and they put all their faith in government and bureaucrats. They are the most corrupt and dishonest people that there are. They are attracted to government like a magnet.
Yes, they are.
So that's where you have to be skeptical. We don't need protection from each other so much as we need protection from government. And
Right.
and the problem is you give government all this power and they completely abuse it. So
Yeah.
the socialists that think, oh, there's always a government solution to every problem, don't realize that the government makes every problem worse. And in fact, most of the problems it makes worse, it first creates them and then it makes them worse.
Well, it does seem as if the level of corruption and wickedness and just basic degeneracy of our government officials has grown exponentially. The more power we give them, I mean, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years
Yeah.
ago, people still kind of believed in the
Yeah.
Constitution. There was some kind of
Yeah.
constitutional protections
Yeah.
laid
And
in.
also, too, like my father, when he was convicted of these so-called tax crimes, my father never tried to cheat the
Right,
government out of money. He didn't lie on his tax returns. He didn't try to hide his income to try to get away with something. My father was very upfront, and he said, "I don't believe I owe any income tax because I believe the way you're enforcing it is illegal."
right.
And so he wasn't hiding anything. He was very upfront and honest with the government about what he was doing and why. And so at most, this should have been a civil matter. There's no
Absolutely.
criminal intent. It's
Right.
not like, hey, this guy is trying to defraud or deceive. He is being honest about what he's doing. He's being very forthright and upfront, and he is very sincere in what he believes. And he's asserting constitutional rights that he believes he has. And
Absolutely.
he claims, and that should never be a crime.
Right.
It's not a crime to be wrong. If you have a sincere belief and you act on your beliefs, you're not a criminal, right? That doesn't forget. Assuming he actually owed the tax, that doesn't mean the government doesn't have a right to collect it from him. But you don't put people in jail for what
Right.
they believe, right?
Right.
And especially when you don't even have any evidence to prove that he didn't believe it. I mean, the government never put on any evidence to suggest my father wasn't 100% sincere.
Mm. Well, your father, Irwin Schiff, was a wonderful teacher, and he was a courageous man, and it was absolutely a political imprisonment. And he was a patriot. And so I'm really thankful that you shared, in the pieces linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show, the story of your dad, because it makes everything that we talk about so much more meaningful. We talk about money, we talk about finances, we talk about the economy, but these things, Peter, are absolutely linked to basic understandings about liberty and freedom. If you do not have free markets, we cannot be free. And the government in the U.S. has gotten to a point where the grift and the pay to play, the insider trading, I mean, it is blatant. I mean, Donald Trump has taken this to a new level. When you look at the wealth of the Trump family and the valuations of the corporate cronies that have partnered up with Trump in their firms like Palantir, double in value in just the first 6 or 8 months of his presidency. We're at a point now where the government is so dangerous, and this is why we have to rein them in. And the way to rein them in is through taking away the purse, right? And that's where we need to be in this country. But the State of the Union. Let's get into it. The headlines today. First of all, you termed the State of the Union the spin of the union, and you went through on your show yesterday very systematically all of the lies, the blatant lies that the president told this country and the people of this country about the economy. Can you give us a quick overview of
Yeah.
just how deceitful he was in that address, and what you believe to be the real state of the economy in the U.S. today?
Yeah, now I didn't go over all the lies. I left quite a few of the lies
There were
out. I, I,
It
I
wasn't
just,
time.
I just focused on the lies that specifically related to the economy,
Mhm.
because that's kind of, what I like to talk about. So I didn't talk about lies related to healthcare or crime or stuff like that. I mean, there were obviously things that the president said that just were not true. And, a lot of people defend Trump as well. That's just Trump being Trump. He's just optimistic. He just likes to brag. And look, there's degrees of this. Just, what the president does, as far as I'm concerned, is way out of line from just braggadocious, kind of like, puffing up things a little bit. I think it crosses the line in most cases to just lying. And I think that the Republicans who defend him, when they know he's lying, I think that's wrong. And I think, Trump is emboldened to lie when he knows that nobody's going to call him out, at least nobody on from his own party. Yes, you'll get, the left will point out a lot of the lies, right? But then it looks like, well, it's all partisan. But, it's not partisan. He's actually lying, you know. So, a lot of it focuses on how the economy is booming and how we've had this unprecedented turnaround where the economy went from the worst in the history of the country to the best in the history of the country just in a few short months from his inauguration. And that the economy is booming, growth rise, that inflation is gone. And all this is just pure BS. The economy in the fourth quarter, I mean, the last year of Biden's term, GDP growth was exceeded the first year of Trump's. So, I mean, if GDP, and that's all they use to measure the economy, if GDP growth was greater in Biden's last year than it was in Trump's first, where is this massive economic turnaround that he's talking about? The trade deficits, despite the tariffs, have not gotten any better. There was a couple of months where they got better, but then they got worse again. But over the course of the time that he's been president, there's been no improvement in the trade deficits. Inflation, he claims, he says he inherited the worst inflation in history from Biden. Well, we had one really bad year, which was 9.1, which was 2022. But he didn't inherit 9.1. The last year, the CPI for the last year, 2024, was 2.9. That's what he inherited. And what was it last year under Trump? 2.7.
Right.
So, I mean, you're talking about a tiny improvement. And he inherited trending down inflation. Inflation was going down when he inherited it. The fact of the matter is, it was Biden who inherited accelerating inflation from Trump.
Right.
Inflation started to really pick up towards the end of his term and continued early in Biden's term before Biden had a chance to do anything.
Right.
So Biden inherited accelerating inflation from Trump. Trump inherited decelerating inflation from Biden. But both Biden and Trump pursued inflationary policies. I'm not letting either one of them off the hook.
Right.
And I think that the increase in the CPI in 2026, by the time we get finished with the year, because we're only in February, but by the time we get all the data on 2026, I think the CPI will have risen by at least 3%, if not more than 3%, which will mean that inflation in 2026, as measured by CPI, will be higher than it was in 2024 when Biden was president. So
wow.
There is no way that Trump could claim this was a miracle turnaround. We have the greatest economy in history, that all these Nobel warriors were wrong, and that we have this booming stock market. He says we hit 50,000 4 years ahead of schedule. I was laughing at that, like there was ever a schedule for when the Dow is supposed to hit 50,000. But when he inherited the Dow, it was at 44,000.
Right.
It would have been a horrible stock market if it took 4 years to go up 12%. I mean, so what's happened in the stock market is nothing. The stock market was stronger under Biden than it is under Trump. So does that mean Biden was a great president or that we had a great economy if we had a stronger stock market when Biden was president? And meanwhile, since Trump's been elected, the U.S. stock market is like the worst in the world. It's barely up. You know, my dividend payer fund, the S&P was up maybe, whatever, 14, 15% last year. My foreign dividend payer fund was up 62%. The U.S. market is flat this year. That dividend payers fund's up another 15%. That's foreign dividend paying stocks. So, you know, foreign markets are running circles around the U.S. So by what definition do we have the hottest economy in the world when we have the coldest stock market in the world? He's trying to claim it's the stock market that proves how hot the economy is. And he said the economy was totally dead, you know, under Biden. And now it's alive and booming, but there's really no difference. You know, so it's all BS that we're being fed by the president. And it's unfortunate because as the economy gets noticeably worse, as inflation really starts to bite even harder, it's going to be a disaster for Republicans. And, you know, between the two parties, obviously, I have a closer affiliation to Republicans than Democrats, even though I don't totally align with either party because they're both big government socialist policies. But overall, I have a lot more that I object to with the Democrats than with the Republicans. So I don't want to see the Republicans, you know, decimated in the polls, I mean, the elections. And the bigger problem is Republicans are associated with capitalism. And so when the Republicans lose popularity, so does capitalism. The Democrats are associated with socialism. So when the Republicans, you know, preside over a weak economy, that helps the cause of socialism because people attribute the problems to capitalism and they think that socialism is the solution, even though it's the socialists in the Republican Party that are the problem. And the Trump is no different. A lot of Trump's agenda is rooted in socialist ideology. You know, he's, you know, a Republican socialist, just like AOC is a Democratic socialist. There's a lot of socialism in the Trump agenda. And a lot of Republicans, unfortunately, are behind it because they are afraid to disagree with the president.
Right.
Because he's popular.
I think there's a lot of disagreement there's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of these terms, you know, capitalism, socialism. The parties, you know, cling to the terms and they define themselves as capitalist or socialist. But it's become very obvious to me that neither political party pursues free markets. The capitalism that Republicans pursue is more, I think, aligned with cronyism and printing money and dumping it into their cronies' pockets, right? And calling that economic stimulus or calling that some kind, you know what I mean? Like it's not neither of them are reducing barriers to entry. They aren't pursuing free market principles. They're eliminating competition by creating top-heavy bureaucracies to regulate away any opportunity for a small or medium-sized business to come in and get started and compete with the big guys. They pass laws, they declare emergencies. I mean, Donald Trump locked the country down and pursued the policies of essential versus non-essential workers and categories of businesses and effectively destroyed millions of small and medium-sized businesses in the country that never came back. And then just handed markets. I mean, when you shut down every restaurant that is a locally owned mom and pop and allow McDonald's and Taco Bell to stay open throughout the pandemic, right? Like, obviously you're going to drive market share. You know, you're going to drive market share into companies like Amazon and into tech, you know, stocks. Like they're always manipulating.
And
markets.
he also signed on to the initial COVID stimulus checks, the enhanced unemployment benefits, the Paycheck Protection Program. All of this stuff was a boondoggle. It was bad policy, and it resulted in the high inflation that Biden inherited.
Right.
And that Trump completely absolves himself of any responsibility when Trump's fingerprints are all over that inflation.
And so it's just it's a complete mess. And, you know, I think that what you are describing here, first of all, the CPI I don't even think actually touches real inflation, what people are really experiencing on a daily basis. I think that's even manipulated as a indicator of how much more people are paying for basically everything. I mean, that's my lived experience here in the US is that everything is more expensive, and not by a little. But this is being seen in recent headlines, and we're going to take a break and then we're going to come right back and we'll get right into it. Record auto loan defaults, record credit card defaults, record student loan defaults. The Wall Street Journal headline that Americans are fleeing the United States of America in record numbers, not since, I want to say, the Great Depression. That it's the highest rate of Americans leaving the US since the Great Depression. And so it's, you mentioned that these are not even benign. These are not benign lies or puffing up. I mean, to me, God bless you for watching the State of the Union, Peter. I couldn't do it because I don't like to be gaslit and endure that psychological and spiritual torture, which is the way I see it, right? Like when someone is banging it over your head, like the sky is green and the grass is blue, and you know that the sky is blue and the grass is green, and they hammer it in, and everyone else in the room is like, yeah. I mean, it's the weirdest experience. To be
Well,
gaslit
I think as I could watch it, it doesn't faze me because I'm not going to be taken in by it. I mean, I see it for what it is.
Yeah.
Just like I could go to these crypto conferences and listen to all this bullshit, and I know what it is.
Yeah.
But you got a room full of people that are just completely taken in with this crap. And they don't know.
It's the weirdest thing. It is the weirdest thing. Like seriously, cult-like behavior happening on Capitol Hill. Both parties, by the way, Democrats. The Democrats actually followed, a guy with dementia for 4 years. I mean, I termed it the weekend at Bernie's presidency, Peter, because Joe Biden, I mean, was so clearly mentally incapacitated, and the Democrats acted like there was nothing going on there. I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. This is why the entire world is looking at the US and saying, you guys are crazy. We don't want your dollar anymore. You cheat with it. You start wars. You create all kinds of chaos. That's really what I want to get into when we come back. The real economic picture here in the US with some of those headlines that I mentioned, and what you see in terms of de-dollarization. This is going to be a financial atom bomb, I think, in this country. People do not realize what is going to happen here when the world finally decouples from the United States dollar as the world reserve currency. The pain is coming, and I want to try to help prepare as many people as possible for that. So buckle up, guys. When we come back, we're going to continue this discussion with the great Peter Schiff right here on the Shannon Joy Show. I want to invite you. I would love to meet you. I know that we have the website up for the Summit for Truth and Wellness. We are meeting live here in Rochester, New York on March 21st for a full day. It is the 2026 4th Annual Summit for Truth and Wellness. I will be there live along with Dr. William Makis, a leader in cancer care using ivermectin, fembendazole, membendazole. He has treated over 8,000 patients. He just got his medical license in the state of Florida. He is revolutionizing how cancers are treated. He is curing cancers. We're going to be talking about cancer care, cancer prevention with Dr. William Makis, and we're going to be joined by Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. She's going to be coming up from the great state of Texas to be with us live in Rochester, New York, and also, of course, the amazing Sasha Latapova, among other distinguished guests. We are about halfway to sell out on this summit. So we have about 4 weeks, 5 weeks before the summit. I want to encourage all of you, if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, go ahead and get those tickets because I do anticipate a full sellout. We have limited seating. It's going to be a beautiful morning of presentations, and then we are going to break and have a lovely luncheon afterwards. Plenty of time to meet and greet, to meet the speakers, fellowship, collaborate. It's just going to be an absolutely beautiful event. I love hosting it. And of course, all the proceeds, everything that we earn over the expenses to put the summit together will go to Americans for Healthcare Alternatives, an amazing organization that I've been working with for many years. Their mission is to provide an alternate or an alternative to the medical industrial complex with information, seminars, and they are seeking to build a brick and mortar wellness center right here in Rochester, New York. We want to help them get closer to that goal. Hey everyone, I am so proud to recommend Schiff Gold to this audience as the gold standard for metals purchasing and investing. I couldn't ask for a better partner to help people understand gold and silver and use them as strategic instruments to protect their family's financial future. Peter Schiff's teaching on markets has shaped my understanding of how economies grow and why they collapse. And I've used them as a critical source for my daily broadcast for over 10 years. The Shannon Joy Show audience already knows and loves Peter because he has been such a treasured educator over the years. He is now the preeminent source for rock solid financial analysis around the world. And this is because he understands the immutable laws of natural markets and his stalwart unwillingness to veer from absolute truths, regardless of economic fads and political pressures. Bottom line, he doesn't sell out. And that means a lot to me. I trust Schiff Gold, and you can too. Go to schiffgold.com/joy today to get started. You'll find some of the lowest spot prices for gold and silver and critical information on protecting your retirement savings with a gold or silver IRA. That's www.schiffgold.com/joy. Hedge against the chaos with our friends over at Schiff Gold. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. And yes, we are so thankful for our partnership with Schiff Gold and Peter Schiff. I am so proud. I mean, I hang my hat on this, Peter, that this is the first show that Schiff Gold and you have ever sponsored. And we're so thankful for your sponsorship. I feel great sending my people to you. Anyone who needs gold, I'm like, this is the guy you need to go to. You've been such an honest broker in so many areas, and I've used your work on the show for decades, or not decades, for the past 10 years. And it's really great to have someone.
Yeah, and your audience needs to know that we can't pay you very much for your referrals because we charge such low prices.
It's true.
Unlike all of the other gold companies that are touted by conservative pundits who are ripping off their customers like crazy in order to pay them the big money to promote the company. So it's very rare that any host is going to recommend Schiff Gold because there's not enough money in there for us to pay them the big money. So it's commendable more so for you, because I'm sure that you're turning down other sponsors who will give you more money, and then they will get it back by overcharging their customers. And we don't do that. So there's not a lot there.
Well, listen, Peter, I waited a good amount of time. I brought this idea to you because when I thought to myself, like, what is the type of gold company that I want to feel confident recommending to my audience? And I kept coming back to you. And I know that I knew that you didn't advertise, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to throw that out there again and see if, he'll work with me. And it is true. I mean, I've seen the numbers. I've seen some of the numbers and some of these gold deals. And, I'm not going to make any statements about any of it because I'm not privy to what other people negotiate. But I think it's a very reasonable and, I think good rate that makes a lot of sense and makes sure that people are going to get always some of the closest closest to spot price gold for physical gold and silver, and just a really great experience with your team. And I just love it. So I'm very happy. And, thank you guys for those of you who have gone to shiftgold.com/joy and checked it out. Appreciate you.
And
And
just, recently, some people, we've had so much business in the last month or two that it's been tough because we're hiring some more people, but not
yeah,
necessarily just Shannon, your show, but it's like all of a sudden people have just, holy shit, gold's going up.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
whole industry has received a lot more interest than we've been used to.
yeah.
And
That's
so
amazing.
people, if there are people now, if it's taking a long time for someone to call you back, that's why.
Yeah,
But we do make it easy to buy online. So if you can just go online and buy something without having to talk to somebody, it makes it a lot easier. That's one of
it's
the reasons we have the shopping cart. So it can make it easier on the company. Because if everybody wants to talk to a representative, it's harder because there's too many people now relative to the representatives.
right. No, I totally understand. And that's a really unique feature is the shopping cart. Like you can go in and literally like purchase gold and silver and everything is very transparent. You can see it's so simple. I've done it
Yeah, the
myself. So,
prices are all real time, and
yeah.
if you refresh the screen, you'll see a different price.
Yep.
But you got it. You have maybe 10 minutes to lock it in, right? You can,
Yeah.
but it's all real time prices, and there are a lot of companies too that don't have any prices on their website, and that's generally because they don't want you to shop around because they're so expensive.
Right. No.
So our prices are right there. You can go shop around and see if anybody has a better price. But
Yeah.
they're,
And I want to talk about T Gold a little bit later in the program
yeah.
too, because I love what you're doing with T Gold, and I want the audience to kind of understand where you're going there. So we'll get to that in a bit. I do on the live chat, Peter. A lot of people are asking about the Comex glitches in the past 3 months. There was a Comex, a couple of them, and what do you make of that? I think that people are concerned that there are attempts to manipulate the gold and silver markets and suppress the valuation, I think. But what are your thoughts on the first and second Comex glitches in the past couple months?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, everybody would tend to have a conspiratorial hat on and look at this. I mean, it could just be the increased volatility and interest and volume, rather, is making these type of glitches more common than they had been in the past. But I don't know. I mean, does it have to do with some deliberate attempt to manipulate the price or slow down the appreciation? Obviously the exchanges have been increasing margin requirements, but they do that with any commodity when it starts to move in bigger moves because obviously the risk is greater. And so people need to have more skin in the game to protect the exchanges in case the client gets wiped out and now has a debit balance. But I don't know. But yes, it is curious. But the interesting thing, or the more important thing, not necessarily interesting, is that the trend is still up. I mean, gold is $5,200 an ounce. Silver is almost $90. So even if they're pulling a few strings to slow it down, they're not stopping it.
Right.
And to the extent that they're intervening to slow down the rise, that's good news for everybody who wants to buy.
Right.
And I'm not advising anybody to sell. So it doesn't affect the people who already own gold. If some more people can buy it a little cheaper, as long as you're not selling yours, today's price doesn't matter very much.
Right. That is evidenced by this headline from Reuters that Indian markets regulators are changing their gold and silver valuation for mutual funds. They are not using the LBMA, the London price, any longer. They're, and this is evidence that the even if Comex is if there's shenanigans and they're trying to manipulate this or that, the market seems bigger than their attempts or ability to kind of put a
Yeah.
lid on this pot. Like the whole world is, I mean, it's a tier one asset. Foreign governments, are buying up gold and silver. The BRICS alliances are getting stronger. I mean, I know, people are not necessarily comfortable with China and Russia aligning, for trading purposes, but all of this is showing that the global market, like the people, like that big Goliath that economic manipulators love to try to control, the Keynesians, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
bigger than what they're attempting to do, and that's why you can continue to see gold and silver breaking out, right?
Yeah. And look, this is a move towards greater transparency. The whole idea of some guys in London meeting in a room behind closed doors and deciding what the price of gold should be, right?
Right.
You don't really know, like they would do the morning fix and the afternoon fix, but people would wait for these
Yes.
guys to tell, hey, here's what the price is. But
Right.
you didn't necessarily see like what they were doing. Obviously, the world we live in today with all the information and the exchanges and the internet, it's much easier for the markets to discover the price. We don't need these guys in a enclosed room trying to figure out what the price of gold is. It's pretty obvious what it is based on open and transparent markets that are trading.
Right.
And so this is the direction we're moving. But yes, the world is moving into gold, but what's also very important to understand is when they're moving into gold, they're moving away from the dollar.
Right.
And this has profound implications. And, none of this was discussed in the President's State of the Union, but it is the most relative development to the state of our union
Right.
that there is today, other than the exploding deficits, which are also part of the reason that the world is moving away from the dollar
Right.
because they have no confidence in our ability to repay these debts. And they know that massive inflation is coming and they're getting out. And
Hmm.
this is going to have serious implications for the U.S. economy, for the standard of living of every American. And that's why Americans need to save themselves. They need to do something. I mean, my standard of living is not going to go down. It will probably go up
Right.
because my net worth is largely in gold and silver related equities, physical metal, and I have a big portfolio of foreign assets that
Hmm.
are going to be revalued relative to US assets. So I'm going to be better off financially as a result of what's going to happen.
Hmm.
My clients, depending on how much of their net worth they have entrusted with me, my clients may be better off financially as a result of what's going to happen. But the vast majority of Americans are going to be worse off. And of course, we'll all be worse off as Americans because if America is broke and the country is collapsing and there's pandemonium in the streets and there's riots and looting, I mean, that's not good for anybody. And we're also in an environment where we may elect government officials that may decide that, Peter Schiff has too much money. Let's take it. He got rich speculating on the demise of America. That's not fair. Maybe he caused it. Maybe it was all of Peter Schiff's gold buying that wrecked our whole economy. Let's get him. We need he needs to contribute that for the good of the country. He can't have all that money to himself.
Right.
And of course, if they're seizing my money, they're seizing a lot of other people's money too. It's not just mine.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not, I don't like what's going to be happening to the country. I wish I could stop what's happening to the country. I've done what I can to warn about it and discourage it. But I have two choices. The country is going to be going through a massive economic collapse. I can decide to go broke during the collapse or get richer.
Hmm.
So between the two choices, I might as well make money
Right.
because it's better than the alternative of losing money.
Hmm.
I can't stop what's going to happen. And so that's what I'm telling, people to do the same thing. Look, you can't stop this wreck,
Yeah.
but you can get out. You can abandon the ship before it sinks. You don't have to
Right.
go down with it. You can do something else,
Well, the way I see it, Peter, if there is enough of an infrastructure of people who can remain solvent when this happens, then out of that you can potentially have enough resource to fight against whatever type of tyrannical thing this new government would do to us. You see what I'm saying? Like they would
Yes.
use
I mean,
a
the
crisis.
fewer the fewer Americans that are broke, the better.
Yes,
So
exactly.
the more the
That's
more of us who can get gold and silver now,
right.
the better off we're all going to be.
Yes.
We can't let the Chinese have all the gold.
Right.
But
Exactly.
unfortunately, Americans are being encouraged to buy Bitcoin. That's going to be
Right.
worthless.
Right. Hey, Peter,
The
many people,
Chinese aren't dumb enough to encourage their citizens to buy Bitcoin.
and you were right about Bitcoin. You have been right about Bitcoin. That's been incredibly volatile. But let's go into the digital and let's go into, never let a crisis go to waste. This government, whether it's on purpose or by accident, whether it's by design or they're just clumsy fools in Washington, D.C., they will always use a crisis as an opportunity to consolidate power, to make themselves richer, and to destroy our Constitution and smash our liberties. And many are talking about the incoming economic crisis here in the United States of America as a vehicle for the government to essentially move us off of the dollar, the cash dollar fiat currency, and onto a new, even worse kind of fiat currency, which would be a digital currency, whether it's a central banking digital currency or a private banking digital currency, some type of tether like asset, or the government partnering with one of these tech companies to create a universal digital, a digital currency linked to a digital ID, very similar to the Chinese system. And people are really, really concerned about that and really worried about that. Um, do you think that's imminent? And, from my perspective, if the demise is somewhat slow, it's slowed down. If we have, 6 months, 12 months, some time to build up resistance, build up resources, we can probably fight against that. But if it's quick, then everyone's going to be in chaos and people are going to want to be able to go to the store and buy something. Like, how do you see something like this playing out? And what are the risks to our liberty in terms of what their plans seem to be in terms of using this crisis to clamp down even further?
Well, obviously, if you go back to the 2008 financial crisis, which was another crisis that the government caused, that I warned about for years before it happened. But in the aftermath of that crisis, we got more government. The government was successful in blaming the crisis on capitalism and using it as an example of why we need more government oversight, why we need more government regulations to prevent these kind of things from happening. And the same thing is going to happen with this crisis. That's going to be many, many times worse than the '08 financial crisis. I'm sure the government is going to blame it on capitalism, and it will be even easier if it happens over the next couple of years while Trump is president, because Trump has already claimed that we have this great economy thanks to his capitalism and his, approach that's associated with capitalism. And when everything collapses around him, it will be even easier for the Democrats and the socialists, who are going to be the leaders of the party, to say, you see, we told you so. We told you Trump would wreck the economy. He wrecked it with unbridled capitalism, unrestrained capitalism. We need more government. We need government to play a bigger role. We need socialism. And the public's going to say, yeah, you're right. That's what we need. That's what's unfortunately.
And so, what would you recommend that people do? Because there's a lot of commentary on the live chat right now about what people think or think that they should do to prepare for this. Um, I've
Well,
always go ahead.
yeah. Well, I mean, for an investment perspective, you have to own the right assets. You have to own stuff that becomes more valuable when the dollar becomes less valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's obviously gold and silver. It's gold and silver related mining stocks. We have strategies with gold stocks. I have a fund, publicly traded fund, Europe Pacific Gold Fund, EPGIX. People can buy that no load at any discount broker. And you should also have a lot of foreign dividend paying stocks. I was just looking at one of the utilities that we own. I own it myself. I just happened to notice it today because it made a new 52-week high, but it's a European utility. It's in France. It's Engie, and the stock's up 7% today. But it's more than doubled on the year. The 52-week low is 16. I own it myself, and I noticed that, I'm up about 150% on this particular stock that I bought as kind of like a low risk, stock. It's not part of what I consider my aggressive stocks. I consider this in my conservative basket of foreign equities. But the current yield on the stock is about 5%. But when I bought it, based on my cost basis, the yield's about 12 or 13%. My dividend yield, right? I get all this income coming in, and it's paid to me in euros. And the euros, are going to appreciate against the dollar. So you want to have a portfolio of non-US stocks that will do well in an environment where the US economy is not doing well, where we have high inflation, stagflation, unemployment. All of this stuff is going to result in more money being sucked out of the US. Donald Trump keeps talking about all the money that's coming in to the US. The reality is money is leaving. That's obvious when you look at the flows and the returns that you can see in the global markets. Foreign stocks are doing much better than US stocks because money is moving out of US stocks into foreign stocks. That's what's driving it.
Yeah, and I'm going to back you up. This is evidenced. This headline dropped today from the Wall Street Journal. Americans are leaving the U.S. in record number. For the first time since the Great Depression, the U.S. experienced a net negative migration in 2025, meaning more people left the country than entered it. This marks a reversal from America's traditional role as a magnet for immigrants, as U.S. citizens are now emigrating abroad in unprecedented numbers, creating a growing diaspora estimated at 4 to 9 million Americans living overseas. They're going to Europe, Portugal, Ireland, Germany, Spain, Netherlands, and the Czech Republic. They're in Mexico.
So
Europe,
is this
Puerto
not
Rico.
counting the illegals that we're deporting? It's just
This is not
legal
counting
Americans?
Legal Americans. These are U.S. citizens, and they're giving up their citizenship, some of them. And essentially, this is voting. This is the market.
Yeah, voting with your feet.
Voting with their feet, overwhelming the gaslighting that is coming from both the Democrats and the Republicans. This time around, we have Donald Trump. It is an overwhelming market reality here in the U.S. that there is no opportunity. And so, to your point, go ahead.
If it wasn't so hard to leave the U.S., even more would be going, because America is very unique in the world. We have a global taxation system. So, for example, if you're a Canadian and you decide just to move to another country, you don't have to file Canadian income taxes. You don't have to pay Canadian income taxes. Right. If you, let's say you move, to any country, let's say you move to a country where there's no tax, like Dubai, right? In the UAE, a Canadian can go to the UAE, can earn whatever amount of money they want, pay no taxes in the UAE, pay no taxes in Canada. They're still Canadian, right? Mm-hmm. They're still Canadian citizens. They still have a Canadian passport, but they don't owe any taxes. But if an American goes to Dubai and gets a job working right next to the Canadian, they can be in the same office, in the same cubicle. Mm-hmm. The American now still has to file U.S. taxes and pay taxes to the U.S. government, even though they don't even live in America anymore. And so it's harder. And if you're, let's say you're a wealthy Canadian and you decide you want to give up your Canadian citizenship, you just tell the Canadian government, I'm renouncing my citizenship. And they say, okay, take care. In America, you want to renounce your citizenship, you may owe a huge exit tax, because you have to basically, if you have a certain amount of money, if you're wealthy, you've got to calculate the value of everything you own, and not just liquid things, but private businesses, real estate. And the government pretends that you sold it all then, and they assign the capital gains tax to you, even though you haven't sold anything. So it's very difficult, much more difficult for Americans to leave America than Canadians to leave Canada.
This government,
So,
man. Wow.
and there's a form. In order to give up your citizenship, you got to sign this form. And you have to, first of all, you can't even be in America to complete the form. You have to be outside America and fill it out. But the form used to be free. Then they raised the price to $500. Now it's $5,000. $5,000 is this. So if you don't have $5,000, you can't even renounce your citizenship. Costs you
What has
$5,000.
happened to this country? What?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Peter Schiff. We have one more break. We're gonna take a quick one, then we're gonna come back. We'll talk about T Gold, and then we'll close it out. We'll get you out of here hopefully by 1:30 p.m., maybe 1:35 p.m.
Oh, let me see my schedule. What else do I got?
Is that okay? No, come on.
Well, my next interview is not till 3:00 my time, which is I'm an hour ahead of you. That's 40 minutes. So yeah, we got a little bit of time.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. We're going to continue. If you guys have questions on the live chat, if you're watching on Substack or YouTube or Facebook, the Twitter, please put in your questions or comments into the live chat. If you're on Rumble right now, let me know what you're thinking, and we can maybe do a little bit of rapid fire questions for Peter when we come back, if we can get to it. So keep it tuned right here. We'll be back in a moment on the Shannon Joy Show. I am so proud to be working with Peter Schiff and Schiff Gold in 2026. There is no one that I would trust more to send this audience to in terms of a metals strategy, whether it's your gold and silver physically that you purchase and keep in your home or in a safety deposit box, gold and silver in an IRA, which you can do through Schiff Gold, or even investing in gold mining stocks, which Peter Schiff and his team can also help you with. It is time to get that metals strategy in place. Right now, silver and gold are soaring. Silver is approaching $85 an ounce, while gold is up over $45 an ounce. And people don't see this stopping anytime soon. I know it seems expensive to you, but I don't know that there is a cap to this in the near future. So you can get started now. I want to encourage you guys right now to go to schiffgold.com/joy. That is schiffgold.com/joy. Everything that you need, Peter's analysis, market reports, research reports. You can get plugged into his investment services, physical gold and silver, which we're going to be talking about this month, and also protecting your retirement with a gold or silver IRA. It's all right there at your fingertips on my page, schiffgold.com/joy. At 123.com/joy. Everything that you're going to need for preparation: generators, solar panels, Faraday products. If you want to disappear and protect yourself from the surveillance state, they have an entire line of amazing Faraday products called dark bags. They're always 10% off at the satellite phone store if you go to sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. The satellite phone store has supported the Shannon Joy Show for many years. They are amazing partners, and let's help the companies that help keep the lights on here at the Shannon Joy Show. So if you are in the market for any of their products or services, make sure you use that promo code JOY and go to sat123.com/joy. That's sat123.com/joy. Welcome back, everyone, to the final segment of the Shannon Joy Show, joined today by the Peter Schiff. And we're talking about what Americans can do in preparation for a world that is off the dollar as the global reserve currency. That is going to impact this country profoundly. And we are going to have 2008 style or even worse types of economic corrections in the next, I would say, 12 to 24 months. It's hard to predict when this is going to happen, how fast it's going to happen, but Peter Schiff has been warning about this for quite some time. And it is now time for people to get into the safety nets. The big picture here, we're talking about this in the break, and you corrected me, but what I was saying to you is the big picture here is that whether it happens quickly or it happens slowly over time, over the next couple years, the world is going off of the dollar as the reserve currency, period. I don't think that there's any dispute in this. I don't think there's anything we can do about that. It doesn't mean that we still can't have cash here in the US, but gold is replacing it. And I said to you as the new, functioning reserve currency, but you took it a step even further, Peter, and said, well, no, really, gold is now becoming like cash. It's becoming like a currency. Can you explain that quickly before we get to
No,
questions?
gold is money.
It's money.
It
Yeah.
doesn't, there's a difference. Currency is a substitute for money.
Okay.
And you can either have legitimate currency that is backed up by money and it derives its value from the money. Like you have a paper bill that you can redeem for gold. That paper is currency, but it's redeemable in money. Or you can have fiat money, right? Or fiat currency, which is currency issued by a government that's backed by nothing and redeemable in nothing.
Okay.
So the difference is legitimate currency derives its value from the money that backs it up. And fiat currency derives its value from confidence, faith, government power, whatever, right? The army. But fiat currencies have never survived. They can survive for a while, but they eventually all become worthless. There is not a exception to that rule. Every fiat currency that has ever existed has become worthless. Now, there are some fiat currencies that exist now that have not become worthless yet, but I'm sure in a couple of 100 years, all the fiat currencies we use today will have no value, right?
Got it.
But gold will still have its value.
Right. Always has.
Yeah. I mean, so the world, I think, is moving away from the dollar as the reserve asset in favor of gold. And in fact, central banks now hold more in gold than they have in dollars. And that hasn't been true for a long time. And this trend is important. It is unstoppable, and it is still early.
Right.
And it's going to drive the price of gold much, much higher as more central banks buy it up. And as more private investors realize that they need to own gold, because private investors have not owned any gold for decades. And so the price of gold is going to move significantly higher from here, as will the price of silver and other precious metals. So, the longer you procrastinate buying it, the more it's going to cost you.
Right. And you're spearheading the T gold is available. And I think that statement that you made, gold is now money. And for the foreseeable future, gold is going to be.
Well, it's been money for thousands of years.
Forever.
This is not.
Right.
It's just that I think people are going to start using it as money again.
Right.
And what T gold is going to do, and it's not, I'm not the only one. I mean, there's all sorts of ways. But what I want to do is help create a platform that makes it easier for people to use their gold as money, not just as a store of value, which is one function of money, but as a medium of exchange, as a unit of account. So when you go to tgold.com and open up an account, and right now, all you can do is buy some gold or silver, and we'll store it for you. We sell it to you really cheap, and we store it for free. So, just get in there and you buy it. Worst case scenario, I never build it out. You could just, you own the gold. You could get it whenever you want, right? You can sell it. You can take delivery. But I'm building it out in stages. But what I'm trying to do is create a platform where people can use their gold as a medium of exchange. So if you have an account with T Gold and somebody else has an account with T Gold, you guys can send gold back and forth to each other. Cool. So you can gift it, you can pay it, you can earn it, whatever. If you owe somebody $20, you don't have to send them $20. You can send them $20 worth of gold. Right?
Okay.
And, they'll get it. I also want to make it so that you can withdraw it in the form of a token. So if you want tokenized gold to load into your wallet, you can take your T gold and withdraw it in a token that will also trade on an exchange. Whether I'm going to develop my own token or partner up with an existing token, I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
But, and you may have options of my token or any other token. I mean, because gold tokens should all be fungible because they're all basically the same if they're backed by real vaulted gold, which is what you want.
Right.
I'm also going to have debit cards where somebody who has a T Gold account, let's say you have you buy $10,000 worth of gold or $1,000 worth of gold, and you have your T Gold account, and I give you a debit card. And if you need to buy something and all you have is your gold, you can use your debit card. And let's say you spend $100, then we'll sell $100 worth of gold, whatever the price happens to be at that moment. And, your card will work.
Right.
Either you can withdraw cash at an ATM or you can go to a restaurant and you can buy something anywhere in the world, whether it's in US or Europe or South America. You use that card and whatever quantity of gold is needed to cover your purchase, it'll get done. But
That's where things are going. It
yeah,
reminds me a little bit of a credit union, or even like a bank even, right? It's like if I have
except
$10,000
it's
in the
not a
bank,
bank because it's your gold. Like
right?
when you have a bank account and you have dollars at a bank, you have loaned your dollars to the bank. And
That's
so
right.
now you're a creditor of the bank. The bank owes you the dollars.
Right.
But when you have a T Gold account, it's your gold. You own it the
Mm,
whole time. We just help you get access to it, but you
got
own
it.
it. There's no bank, but
Yeah.
you have all the functionality of a banking system because you can pay, you can make and receive payments to your T Gold account. But the difference, other than the fact that it's not a bank and you don't have to worry about it failing because it's your money and it's just sitting in a vault somewhere with your
Right.
name on it. But um, as the dollar loses value, your gold is gaining
It's
value.
going to appreciate.
So
Yeah.
if you start making it a habit of putting your savings into gold, let's say whenever you get your paycheck, you can have a direct deposit. Let's say you make $2,000 a month and you immediately just convert it into gold and stick it into T gold. And now
I
you
love
have
it.
gold. And then you
I'm doing it.
over time, everything you buy is going to be cheaper. The prices are going to keep falling. You're going to notice that it's costing you less gold to buy stuff than it used to cost you.
So
Because
you're
in
okay.
terms of gold, the prices of goods and services will go down. Not every day. I mean, some days they may go up because
Yeah.
gold changes. But over time, the longer you hold on to your gold, the cheaper stuff is going to get.
Right. This is what I love about T Gold is that I don't want to use the word democratizes, but it does make owning gold um, easier for people who are not millionaires or billionaires,
Yeah, you could
people
buy
who,
$100 worth. It doesn't even, there's
right.
no minimum.
Right. And usually, I mean, if you buy physical gold and silver, you have to ship it and there are insurances and there are usually minimums. Like you can usually it's like $5,000 or something like that. Like this opens up this
Yeah.
preparation aspect to
Now
every American. I
you're
love it.
still you're still buying physical gold. We're just not shipping it to you. We're
Yes, I
keeping it
love
in
it.
in storage. You can get it shipped out later.
Yeah.
But the point of T Gold is if you want your gold shipped to you, just go to Shift Gold and buy it. We'll send it to you. But if
Right.
you want to have some gold that you don't custody yourself, that you could use in commerce, that you
Yes.
could, then that's where the T Gold account comes
Right.
in. Because if you buy, somebody buys $10,000 worth of gold from Shift Gold, and we ship these bars or coins to your house, and now you put them in a safe somewhere,
Right.
they're not readily accessible. I mean, if you want to buy something, I mean, you'd have to go and sell one of the bars. You'd have to take it to a coin dealer. You'd have to call up Shift Gold. You'd have to ship it back to
Got
us.
it.
We'd have to pay you. You'd have to wait for the money.
Yeah.
But with T Gold, you have instant access to the liquidity. You can
Yes.
spend your gold 24/7. It's in your wallet. It lives on your debit card or in your smartphone.
It's
You
awesome.
have you have access to it. And you can transfer the ownership. So the beauty of gold, I don't have to transfer the physical gold. So if I owe you some, let's say you did some work for me and you say, Peter, I'm going to do this work for you. I want 100 grams of gold, whatever. I want you to pay me in gold. I don't have to physically give you the gold. I don't have to put it in an envelope and ship it to you. We don't have to meet in the street. I don't have to hand it to you.
It's like an electronic transfer.
I could just
Yeah.
transfer the ownership. The gold
Yeah.
just sits in the vault, and I basically tell the vault, this gold that used to belong to Peter Schiff, now this is Shannon's gold,
Yeah.
and Shannon and they say okay, and it's done. They just you register the transaction,
Very
and now
cool.
the gold that I used to own belongs to you. Now you got it. You
Yeah.
could do the same thing. You can send it to somebody else, or So that's all it has to do. And that does everything Bitcoin does, except it's faster and cheaper, and you don't have to worry about the value plunging overnight because it's gold.
Because it's
Not
real.
it's not make believe like Bitcoin.
This is great. Um, I'm going to set up a T Gold account. I have all the things. I do all the things. But I'm setting up a T Gold account. I love it. Susan from Substack wants to know, what do you think about using home equity to buy precious metals?
Well,
Hmm.
I don't encourage people to borrow money to buy non-income producing assets because now
Okay.
you're going to have to service the debt.
Yep.
So I don't encourage that. Although, I like the idea that you can borrow against your home now at a rate of interest that I think is relatively low. But I would rather borrow against a home and acquire income producing assets. Like I mentioned, that stock, if that's paying a 5% dividend,
Right.
if you can now, the mortgage now might cost you 6 or 7. So that stock is not necessarily a great example. But if you could buy stocks that are yielding 8% and your mortgage is 6, then it pays for itself. As long as
Mm-hmm.
the dividends are relatively secure, you'll have cash flow to service the debt. Inflation will eventually wipe it out, and you'll be able to retire the debt basically off the income of the investment that you accumulated. But even though I think that might work out, and even
Yeah.
though it probably would work out if you borrowed and bought gold, I just don't encourage it because I because of the potential that there could be a problem if there's
Yeah.
gold happens to drop and you get in trouble and now you need to sell it because you borrowed against your property, or I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
people could get in trouble with leverage. So I generally don't encourage it.
Yeah.
But when mortgage rates were rock bottom, I mean, in the threes, I was telling everybody to take out a 30-year fixed rate mortgage because I
Yeah.
said,
Seriously.
you're never going to get money this cheap, and then just, make a solid investment with the money.
2%, Peter. We got lucky. I got two. We got in at 2% on my house. I
Yeah,
was like, that was,
never pay that back.
woo! It's crazy. Mark the Regan. There is a Canadian. He's a billionaire. His name is Eric Sprott. And Mark really likes Eric. He wants to know if you like Eric Sprott. I've never heard of this guy. But Mark is asking on the live chat. What do you think? Do you know Eric Sprott?
I know him. I've met him on
Okay.
occasion, and obviously I know his reputation. He's, one of the biggest people in Canada and probably in the world for that matter, in gold.
Awesome.
And he's obviously a good guy because if you're in gold, chances are you understand the reasons. And he's been in gold for longer than I have.
All right. All
And
right.
and yeah, and he's made more money at it than I have too. So yeah, so he's a good guy. I
Okay.
guess he's a competitor in ways. They manage money. We have managed money. They have funds that are around gold. So he's in the same, financial services as I am.
But we
So
need more of you.
I'd prefer that people work with me than with Eric Sprott, but I got
Right.
nothing against Eric.
Yeah. Well, and we want lots of people in the space. Like there's strength
Yeah.
in numbers. And so the more people out there moving towards this new type of economic situation, hopefully that is based on gold, the better, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But of course, you guys want to go to Peter Schiff, okay?
Yeah, I'd like to one day be
Schiffgold.com/joy.
I
Right.
want to be the Eric Sprott of America.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Martin Buskman says he just, all caps letters, he just got his silver today. So excited from Schiff Gold. So that's pretty awesome, Martin. That's great. So many people in my audience, Peter, are purchasing physical gold and silver for the very first
Did
time.
he remember to use your code or
I
let
probably
us?
not. No one ever uses my code. No one ever goes to my That's amazing. Mark the Regan, as usual. Peter, a great show. I love that as well. There is now, let's end on this. Let's go to Fearless Rose in USA, because Fearless Rose in USA doesn't think she needs any gold. And this is what she said. We'll end on this. We'll let you go. She wrote, own my own home, own my own car. Cash is in the safe. I've got a 1/4 acre to grow on for food. I don't need silver and gold. Can't eat it. What would you say?
Well, first of all, she's got cash in her safe. Well, why not have gold or silver in your safe? Because the cash may not have any value, right? The
There you
cash
go.
is obviously there because
Right.
now she says she owns her own home. Well, what if something happens? Let's say the roof starts to leak and she has to call somebody to fix it. What if they want gold or silver? I mean, he may not, the repairman may not want to be paid in food. Maybe you don't have enough food that's readily available. Maybe, the crops are still growing. So in a world of high inflation where the dollars are losing value or have lost all value, to the extent that you're not completely self-sufficient and you may need to engage in commerce with other people,
Right.
you need to have something to trade. You need to give them something for their labor or their products that they're selling. And, so you need it.
Yeah.
And I would basically replace the cash in your safe that's earning you no interest and just depreciating every day. I would replace that with gold and silver. I mean, however much cash that is, just use it all to buy some gold and silver.
Right. Where do you think I'm seeing insane numbers on gold and silver? I'm seeing gold over 6,000 by the end of the year. I'm seeing $10,000, $15,000 gold like in the foreseeable future. Where do you think things could go with this? You believe we're right at the beginning, right?
Well, obviously, we're not right at the beginning.
Right.
I mean,
$35.
when I started buying gold for myself and clients, it was under $300.
It's wild.
Silver was under $5. Right.
It's
so,
crazy.
But, the central banks didn't really start buying it in a big way, gold, until the last couple of years.
Yep.
So the central banks really started buying gold when it was above 2,000, maybe even above 3,000. So from that perspective, yes, when I first started buying gold, central banks were selling back then. They were making a mistake. They had too much confidence in the dollar. That confidence was misplaced, obviously.
Right.
But they've learned their lesson, and now they're getting back into gold. So we're still early. And as far as the movement of traditional investment capital into gold, we're in our infancy.
Right.
I mean, guys like me, guys like Eric Sprott, we've been buying gold for 20, 30 years. We've been advocating it, but we are the exceptions, not the rule. We speak to a very small audience in relation to the entire investment, universe.
Right.
But what's happening now is that more traditional mainstream investors, institutional, retail, are now for the first time dipping their toe in the water.
Yeah.
They're starting to allocate a small amount of their portfolios for the first time into gold, into silver. And so this is still early.
Yeah.
And so this trend has got a long way to go.
Okay.
And I think what did happen over the last couple of years is maybe some people who might have gone into gold or silver ended up buying Bitcoin. They got suckered into this digital version of gold.
Right.
Well, as that doesn't work out, I don't think they're going to think, oh, well, I don't need any gold. I think they're going to realize, okay, I wanted gold. Unfortunately, I got conned into this digital crap.
Right.
I got to buy the real thing now because that's been going up.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see the money that was initially moving into crypto move into gold. Not the same money, because most of that money is going to be lost. But the investors who may have put a small allocation into Bitcoin and they got burned because they lost it, as they allocate more, it will be into actual gold.
All right.
Yeah.
Peter Schiff, everyone loved the show. And yeah, Buskman forgot to use the promo code. So great. Don't get credit for that. You're fired, Shannon. No, I'm just kidding. Peter, thank you so much. Hey guys, if you want to check out everything and all of the information that is offered over at Schiff Gold, please go to schiffgold.com/joy. That's schiffgold.com/joy. And always use that joy promo code. Peter, thank you so much for being with us and giving us so much of your time. You're the best. All right. We'll talk soon.
I've got just a few minutes to eat before my next interview.
All right. All right. You got this. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Okay. And thank you guys for being with us today on the SJ show. I wanted to fill up as much time as humanly possible with Peter because Honestly, I could probably talk to him for 2.5 hours, 3 hours. There's just so much out there to be learned about where these markets are going. But that was a good start. Thank you guys for being with us today. Annie, thank you for producing the SJ show. Please remember our sponsors, Schiff Gold. We have our friends over at the Satellite Phone Store, sat123.com/joy. Promo code JOY. And of course, Don Polano over at PCM and Associates. Have a great day. We will be back on Monday to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.